Thank you for joining us at the launch of the 2014 Economic and Social Survey of Asia and the Pacific. The survey is the flagship publication of ESCAP, the United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and the Pacific. For more than 6 decades, it's been the go-to source, offering the most comprehensive annual assessment of socio-economic progress in the Asia-Pacific region. It examines both existing and emerging development issues and makes policy recommendation to ESCAP's member states. Survey 2014 makes the point that Asia and the Pacific is still experiencing relatively subpar economic growth. Average regional growth is forecast to pick up moderately to 5.8% in 2014 from 5.6% last year. This is the third successive year of growth below 6%. So why aren't Asia-Pacific economies growing faster? The reason is that amid regional economic rebalancing, growth is being held back by both external and domestic challenges. On the external front, slow growth in the advanced economies has negatively affected Asia-Pacific exports and the region's financial sector. Trade, which has traditionally driven economic growth, has slowed as a result, among others because of trade restrictive measures. There has been a growing tendency following the global crisis towards protectionism. Trade restrictions deprive Asia-Pacific of about $255 billion in export opportunities between 2009 and 2013, representing more than 1.6% of regional GDP. Another external challenge has been financial volatility, triggered by the continuing normalization of monetary policy in the United States, which could also lower growth in India, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Russian Federation, Thailand, and Turkey by between 0.7 and 0.9%. But even more challenging for many developing countries in the region are domestic structural constraints to growth, in particular infrastructure shortages, rising inequality, environmental stress. Survey 2014 urges governments to consider a range of policy interventions, including stimulating domestic demand, bridging infrastructure gaps, boosting decent job prospects for youth, stepping up social protection spending, and addressing environmental degradation. Constrained growth prospects make productive public spending critical. This is why Survey 2014 calls for the unlocking of fiscal space to nurture inclusive growth and sustainable development. As levels of domestic resource mobilization are relatively low in the Asia-Pacific region, the survey emphasizes strengthening tax revenues to raise these necessary resources. ESCAP's analysis reveals that for many Asia-Pacific countries, the gap between their potential and actual tax collection is more than 5% of their GDP. Closing the tax gaps in 16 developing Asia-Pacific economies would increase total revenues by more than $300 billion and boost tax revenues by more than 70% in some of these countries. To further unlock the fiscal space, Survey 2014 recommends broadening the tax base, rationalizing rates, making tax administration more efficient to tackle tax evasion and tax fraud, and carefully sequencing tax reforms. Another key recommendation is regional cooperation on tax issues, which could be facilitated through the creation of an Asia-Pacific Tax Forum. Such a forum would help monitor tax legislation and regulation across the region. It would also share best practices and address key issues such as how to avoid tax competition for foreign investment and how to tackle illicit fund transfers. As the largest and most representative intergovernmental platform for Asia-Pacific countries, ESCAP would be well placed to host this forum. On these and a range of critical issues, we look forward to Survey 2014 contributing to your national and sub-regional dialogues on how to make Asia-Pacific growth more inclusive and more sustainable. Thank you for your participation in the launch today.